Hey guys, I'm Kristen. This is my AuthorTube channel, and today we're talking about what makes a good story opening. Let's do this! If you've seen my previous videos, you know that I'm about to attend a writing conference, and I'm so excited about it, so excited. And one of the things that I'm the most excited about is a critique of the opening of my novel. So I'll be in a group. There's, I think, probably 5 or 6 of us, and we're each going to take a look at the opening of the other person's novel. And that kind of led me to wonder what makes a good novel opening? Like, what makes a great story opening? And I've read books that I've loved. There have been so many stories that I think have fantastic novel openings, but at the same time, ones that I didn't love too. And so what is it that makes a good story opening? I've been thinking a lot about it. This conference is making me think even more about it, and I've been doing some subsequent research. So I'm here to share what makes a good story opening. Story openings are so important because it sets the tone for the rest of your book. Not only does it set the tone for the reader and kind of set expectations on what kind of book you're going to be writing, what kind of character you're going to be introducing, what genre it's going to be, what voice it's going to be, but you're making certain promises to the reader about what to expect in your book. And so the opening is very important. Not just the first sentence, like I'm talking about like the first probably chapter, where you start your book, how you introduce your character, what flaws they have, what strengths they have, what quirks they have, you know, making it so that the audience can really connect with that main character as well as like them. It's really hard to do. And so here are some elements behind some really great story openings. And when I say some, I mean some, because it depends so much on what genre you're writing, what age group you're writing for, your preference, your reader's preference. Like, there's so many different factors that it's very difficult to definitively say these 5 things are what makes a good story. Number 1 is setting the baseline and the current status of the story. In your opening, you want to tell the reader what's the current world like. Is it peaceful? Is it in a time of war? What's happening in your main character's life? What's happening just in general, so that they can level set and know what the baseline is. If you keep your audience in the dark and don't give them the information about kind of what's going on in your story, where your character's at, where your plot is taking place, like any of that information, if you let them fly blind, you're going to lose them. You're going to lose their interest, you're going to lose their trust, and it's going to be really, really hard to really build on the opening of your story. So making sure that that baseline and that the current status of the world of your novel is established is tip number 1. Tip number 2 is having a good voice. Establishing the voice of your novel in the first opening is important. Is it going to be serious? Is it going to be pithy? Is it going to be mysterious? Is it going to be, you know, light and fun? Is it going to be, I don't know. Like, I mean, there could be a million different voices, because there's a million different writers, and each of us have a different element that we write with as far as voice goes. And so we need to make sure that our voice and that the voice of the story is established in those first pages. That's going to be super important as the audience starts to build trust, kind of try to figure out what's going on in the book, and really gets involved in your story, your plot, and your main character. The third tip is you're going to want to drop some hints. You're going to want to foreshadow. You're going to want to make a little bit of a promise about what's to come in your novel. Is it going to be a mystery? Is it gonna be, you know, normal? There's so many things that it could be. Like, for example, in my murder mystery, it opens up with the actual murder, and you start to see my main character formulating the idea that she could possibly help solve the crime. And so that's the promise there, that this cute bakery owner who is in her 30s and is just a marketing person is gonna solve this crime. And so that's the promise that is left for my readers. That's the hint that she is gonna be assisting in the investigation. And so, as silly as that is, that's the promise, and that's kind of the hint and the foreshadowing that I'm dropping in the beginning of my story. In the story about the girl who can see into the future, I drop hints that she can see into the future. I foreshadow that, I show that, and it's really important to do that because you want to show your audience kind of what's to come. You want to entice them, which leads me into the fourth thing. You want to make your introduction as enticing and interesting as possible. Throw in fun little twists, add quirks to your characters, throw in some plot lines. That foreshadowing is so important. Make sure that your voice is interesting. Introduce important characters, throw in the location and the plot. You know, you make sure that your story structure includes really interesting and really enticing things in that first introduction so that your story intro just knocks it out of the park. The fifth tip is you need it to be convincing. And this comes down to motivation. So I guess the fifth tip is motivation. You really need to have realistic motivation for your characters and for the actions that they're taking and the things that they're trying to do. If you can't realistically put together motivation and have it something that your audience really trusts, it's going to be really hard to build on that book. So your introduction really needs to have a good motivation. Your character needs to have a great motivation. You know, there has to be that in place. Otherwise, no one's going to trust the introduction of your book, and no one's going to actually trust the rest of the story as well. So there really needs to be like convincing action, convincing thoughts, convincing dialogue, just convincing motivation so that that is established. 100%. And then the final sixth tip is so hard and is the reason that I've rewritten my beginning so many times, like literally hundreds of times. Start your story in the right place. You want to make sure that you start your story in a place where there can be an aha moment soon enough that your audience doesn't lose interest. So starting too early, you have a lot of setup to do and it's a slow build, and sometimes that can be a little boring. If you start too late, there's a lot of backstory that you have to tell, and that can also be a little bit boring. So just make sure that you're starting kind of at, like if the action's right here, you're gonna want your story to start about right here. So there's a little bit of a climb, but the audience is getting into it and like involved in it soon. And starting the story at just the right spot is so hard to figure out. That's why I haven't successfully finished my fiction books yet because it's really hard to figure out where to start. But it's critical, and that's what makes an opening really great. So number 6 is to make sure that you're starting your book and that your intro is starting in the right spot. So those are my intro tips for today. I hope you like them. There are plenty more out there, so please don't think this is a definitive list. If there's more that you like, leave them in the comments below and let me know if this was useful and what other kind of videos that I should make. Thanks for watching. I appreciate all of my subscribers and all of my viewers, and I'll see you in my next video.